Hello, welcome to the interview here on France 24. Well, the decision this week by Abdoulaye Wade to gracefully accept defeat in Senegal's presidential election is being hailed as a, quote, great victory for democracy in a West African nation, the only one that has never known a military coup. But while many Senegalese are celebrating, their nearby neighbors in Mali are seething in frustration. That's because mutinous soldiers there seized power in a coup last week, overturning 20 years of democracy in that country. Now, in a region beset by insurgencies, by rebellions, by a spreading terrorist threat, famine and drought, Senegal was a rare piece of good news. And the question we are asking our guest today, who is William Fitzgerald, who is joining me from Washington. Greetings to you. You're the U.S. Deputy Assistant Secretary for African Affairs. Long title. I hope I got it right.
Yeah, you did.
I want to basically start with Mali, and I want to ask you whether or not what we have seen in Mali, you are confident or not that it is just sort of a blip on the radar, and perhaps democracy will be restored in due time. And if so, what's the U.S. doing to help towards that end?
Well, thanks for the question. I think the situation in Mali is very deeply troubling. It is a country with a relatively long democratic history and has been served up as a model for other African countries to emulate. I think what Captain Sanogo and the other mutineers have done is, at least as far as the American government is concerned, is completely unacceptable. We stand with the rest of the international community. You know, we've weathered crises in West Africa in recent times, in Cote d'Ivoire, in Guinea, and even in Niger, Mali's neighbor. And I think we will continue to do that. ECOWAS and the African Union will take the lead, and we will work with them to try to reverse this seizure of power. Now, it's completely unacceptable.
ECOWAS, which you just referred to, obviously being the West African Economic Community there. Have you, the French ambassador, we've heard reports, has actually spoken on the telephone. The French ambassador to Mali has spoken with the ousted president of Mali. Has the U.S. made any contact with him? Can you tell us anything about where he is, his condition? Is he safe?
We were in contact with ATT, Amadou Djimani Touré, late last week. We haven't spoken with him since, but we're assured that he's in a safe place and that he remains in Mali.
He is still in Mali itself. What the U.S. has cut off, as I understand, half of its aid to Mali, which is about, what, about $140, $150 million a year.
That's a good ballpark figure, absolutely. Of course, humanitarian assistance isn't effective, but our bilateral assistance, along with the bilateral assistance from France, from the European Union, from the major donors, we stand united in cutting off all bilateral assistance to this fake government.
So the fake government, you have this economic lever to use. Are there any other measures, steps right now that the U.S. is taking or bringing pressure that it's bringing to bear in order to try to reverse this coup?
Well, I'll be honest with you. I think the greatest pressure that exists, certainly the international community wields a lot of pressure. A lot of it's economic, a lot of it is political. But I'll tell you that it's the African Union and ECOWAS, the economic group of West Africa, which also has a political role and a security role. They are currently meeting in Abidjan in Cote d'Ivoire, and their declaration will be the roadmap on how we proceed. They can bring the greatest leverage to this problem at this point.
Now, we've been told that the reason, the coup leaders themselves have said so much, the reason they seized power is because Touré, they said, was ineffective. He had failed to deal with an insurgency in the north of Mali. Now, that was an insurgency led by Tuareg nomads, and a lot of those fighters were people who had been Muammar Gaddafi's loyalists from Libya. Is this the cutting edge of sort of the fallout from Muammar Gaddafi's fall, these ex-fighters streaming over borders with lots of weapons?
Well, I think that's fair to say, but let me start with, I think Mali was supposed to have its elections within 2 months, and the idea that these mutineers have decided that they wanted to topple ATT with elections just down the road, I think it's a little bit hard to see. What this began as, in fact, was an argument over salaries, is my understanding. So I think their reasoning is shifting as it suits them. There's no question that members and high-ranking members of the MNLA, one of the Tuareg groups, were serving in Gaddafi's military and benefited from the training over years and years, as well as the weapons that they're using, highly sophisticated weapons that they brought with them from Libya.
And this, I mean, this is a very big threat, is it not? Because, I mean, whatever else you want to say, Touré, you know, he was a democratically elected president, perhaps, but he was not dealing effectively with this threat. We have seen the Tuaregs winning battle after battle against the regular Mali army.
Right. Well, I think that was, in part of his strategy was to yield on the smaller towns and to protect the major cities, the major provincial capitals and the like. They have lost some of those. That's certainly true. There's no question that this force is a pretty robust, potent force that is difficult to take on in the field. What we have now, however, is the MNLA and other Tuareg groups taking advantage of the confusion in the southern part of the country, in Bamako, because of this uprising and seizure of government, and they are beginning to profit from that and have said they're going to profit from that. My understanding is they currently have encircled Kidal, which is a major population center in the north, and they may continue on. Ultimately, the Tuareg rebellion will have to be solved, however, at the negotiating table, as it has in the past. Tuaregs certainly have some legitimate grievances, but they're not going to win what they want on the battlefield. They've got to come to the negotiating table. We see that Algeria is engaged in brokering these talks. They've done so in the past, and we're very confident that once we sort out the southern part of Mali and restore the constitutional government of Mali, that the negotiations can accelerate. And
that we have to see if that actually comes to pass. I'd like to broaden it out just a little bit beyond Mali.
Sure.
We've been seeing what a lot of people would characterize as a spreading threat from Al-Qaeda's Northern African branch. It's called Al-Qaeda in Islamic Maghreb. Now, there's supposed to be a group of countries, right, fighting that, based in southern Algeria. There's supposed to be a joint counterterrorism unit. It's not too effective, is it, so far?
Well, I'd have to disagree with you there. Before this problem in Mali, in fact, over the past 6 to 8 months, you've seen unprecedented cooperation amongst the countries. You had the Malians fighting with the Mauritanians against AQIM, or in French, AQMI. There's no doubt that this is a terrorist threat that has to be dealt with. And finally, we're pleased to see that the countries are coming together to share intelligence, to carry out joint operations. This is precisely what I think we've wanted to see, certainly in the United States.
But they can't do it on their own. Go ahead. I'm sorry, but they can't do it on their own. What sort of material aid, if any, or any sort of aid, is the U.S. providing, perhaps, to help them bolster this fight?
Well, you know, since 2005, we've been providing assistance to all of the countries involved under the Trans-Sahara Counterterrorism Program. It's mostly assistance that will provide vehicles and training as well to handle this sort of insurgency in the north, this sort of terrorist threat. You're absolutely right. No one country in the region can handle and defeat this threat. It requires joint, all of them to come together to defeat this threat, and that's what we continue to push for.
Let me just ask you, you know, I know it's not in the region we've been talking about, but in Nigeria too, you know, we've been seeing a growing Islamist insurgency in the guise of Boko Haram, which has been attacking schools, government officials, police, army, you name it, anything with government written on its label.
Right.
Do you see the threat that all these groups could come together? You have the Al-Qaeda groups, you have Boko Haram, the Tuareg rebels, a real pan-African threat here?
No, I don't see them all coming together. There is some truth that AQIM and Boko Haram have some ties. I think they're negligible at this point. Remember that Boko Haram has never carried out an attack outside of Nigeria. It is an internal Nigerian threat. Without question, it is a very, very dangerous group.
But Akim started. Akim, I'm sorry to butt in. Akim started also as an internal threat, only in Algeria, and it spread out.
Well, but that's over the past 10 or 15 years. Again, I think if you look at what Boko Haram is trying to achieve, which is in effect an Islamic caliphate in the northern part of Nigeria, and the fact that they haven't carried out any attacks outside of Nigeria, gives you an idea that it's a different thing than what's going on.
Yeah.
As far as the Tuaregs, I think the Tuaregs, frankly, many of the Tuaregs are upset that AQIM is using the northern part of Mali, their territory. So I think it's easy in trying to put all these things together, but in fact, I think they have very many organic differences.
William Fitzgerald, Deputy Assistant Secretary of State for African Affairs. We're going to have to leave it there. We've been talking today about the recent coup in Mali. We start out talking a little bit about Senegal, never got back to it. But I thank you for sharing your thoughts today. And you're hopeful that a democratic government will be restored to power in that West African nation. Thank you very much for joining us.
I'm optimistic. Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And thanks to all of you for watching the interview here on France 24.